Hello and welcome to the Big 12 Mafia Show. I'm your host, Nathan Brown, and with me I have Immaculate and Moen, fresh off their special appearances on the Greg Flugar Peek Around the Corner. How are you guys doing today?
Excited.
Excited? That's the best
Loving
word. Loving it. I like that better. Let's show some energy, guys. All right. Really quick, before we just jump right in, Immaculate, what are you saying?
I've said I'm just getting my refill here. I spent so much energy before, but we're about ready to get going again.
Okay, all right. So let's talk really quick. First, let me give a quick shout out to all those that have been here and are starting the show. We originally thought this was going to be a UConn show, but we had some scheduling difficulties, and we'll get that show in. It's just going to be in a little bit. We have people we got to work around and stuff like that. So we'll pull off that show. If you're here for the UConn show and you notice the late change, that's the reason. And I apologize about that, but you know, these guests are people too, and I really respect them and what they do with their time. And so they had more important things to do, which is certainly understandable. If you're new to the show, please subscribe. Leave us a comment or suggestion at the end of the show, or I guess you can do that during the middle of the show. And also give us a thumbs up and let people know that you enjoy the stuff that we put out, because I think our show's growing leaps and bounds, and we appreciate everybody who's helped us get here, and all those that are going to be our future listeners. We really, really, really appreciate them. We'll call out our first viewers tonight. We have Kaufman in the house, Earl Carr, David Hackett. Welcome, David. Laura Weiss. I just want to make sure I'm going to get all these. Conundrums here. Laura Weiss again. Overworked, underpaid. Now, there's a name. I love that. Jeff Fuller's in the house. He'll be joining us in a little while, probably about 45 minutes. Jeff will be here with us. Let's see. Again, BR's in the house. Our first subscriber. Thank you, BR. Don K is here. Immaculate again. Sergeant Pickles, all the way from the state of Washington, my home state. Thanks for being here, Sergeant Pickles. Andrew Barchak, again, one of my subscribers. Our web brings the boom. That's right, our web. We are with the boom. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. I fashion the shows that we put on, this and Holy Rivals, around you. So please give us your comments and suggestions. Find us on Twitter. Immaculate and Moen are key contributors to this show. And all the production that we put out, they're two of the best. And I want to definitely let them know I appreciate them being here. Lastly, if I've now got my shelves up, if you have stuff that you want to get out to the world and have seen, you want to send it to me, please send me a DM. Ask me for what you're looking for. I'll give you my address. And if you send that stuff to me, I will definitely put it up behind me. I'm still waiting on my Big 12 flag. Once that's in, that'll replace the Ukrainian flag. Not that I'm not supporting Ukraine, but after all, this is a college football, primarily sporting show. And while I salute those gallant men and women sacrificing in Ukraine, we want to change the tone a little bit, and we'll do that once we get that Big 12 flag. I said last, but this is the last. If you want to participate in the show, you can either leave a regular comment, and I'll get to it when I can, a super chat, which I've read every super chat that's ever been out on any of my shows, so we'll definitely get that into the show. Or you can do a subscription, and let me show everybody what the subscription page looks like. Actually, I'm going to do that in a little while, because the page I was looking at actually changed to a headline, and I don't want to move that. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So I'm going to start with Moen tonight. Moen, tell us what you're hearing and seeing this last. It's been just about 24 hours since we spoke last.
Well, let me do a talk up first. Like, comment, subscribe, buy the t-shirts, get a subscription. You know you want to do it. Big 12 Mafia here every day, it seems like, because nothing in realignment's slowing down. Florida State's going to the Big 10. Washington's going to the Big 10. Who's going to the Big 12? What happens to the ACC? We're going to speculate right here. We're going to give you what we think, and we're probably going to be wrong, but we're going to be wrong with passion. That's what we're going to give you here. So like, comment, subscribe. And
Thank
Florida
you,
State
Moen.
is coming to the
I really appreciate that, Moen. First of all, I want to make sure you know how much I value you being here.
and Florida State is coming to the Big Ten. Everything in that interview says Florida State is coming to the Big Ten. Big Ten offers the most money. Big Ten offers the most research opportunities. Big Ten offers the most exposure. There is nothing in that interview that I saw that leads me to believe Florida State is going anywhere but the Big Ten.
So you believe that the noise that this is a feint by the Florida State to just get more money and control for a move to the SEC. You put no credence in that.
Absolutely not. Here in Ohio, we have concealed carry and constitutional carry. One of the first things we always teach is you don't pull a gun unless you plan on shooting it. So you don't pull that gun unless you plan on pulling that trigger. And Florida State, if they pull that gun, they're going to pull that trigger.
Fair enough. Now, what do you think about the Pac-12 and those schools? Let's delineate those. Oregon, Washington, you already mentioned, so we don't have to worry about those. But what do you think about Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah?
I think, depending on what Florida State does, it could completely reset everything that we think is going to happen in the Pac-12. If the Big is trying to get to 24, they're going to have to add at least one more West Coast team. Is Arizona State willing to jump to the Big 12 feet first or head first if they think that big invite might be coming somehow? Well, I don't know about that. So, I mean, but the big news is Florida State and probably Clemson coming to the Big Ten.
Very good. Immaculate, give us your rundown. First, start with Florida State and Clemson, which obviously the sun goes from east to west. So that's the natural way that the story would flow. And then tell us what your latest inklings are about the Pac-12 and where those schools will end up.
Well, first off, I'm going to have to defend myself. I did not say that I thought it was a pure bluff that FSU will not go to the Big Ten. I 100% think FSU will go to the Big Ten. I just happen to think that the SEC and ESPN were going to come calling.
Did somebody say that about you?
Well, you know how it is. You're on a show. We're going real quick. Both me and Greg are excited. Some people, I think, kind of mistook it for me saying that it's just a bluff.
Okay.
Not a bluff. Okay. I agree everything with Moen just said. You don't say what he said if you're not planned and prepared to go to the Big Ten.
Right.
I just think last second, I mean, and we're hearing some stuff coming out of ESPN supposedly where they're looking at Miami and University of North Carolina. So if that's true, then there's no way they're not also reaching out to FSU. But that interview is something. Honestly, I did not expect it to be that much. I expected it to have a couple fire pieces in it, or maybe nothing at all, where they were trying to like calm everyone down so they could have their behind the scenes talks.
Right.
The fact that he came out firing, now it wasn't like he was just being completely direct on everything, but he got so close to the truth so many times that everyone pretty much knew what he was saying. So Florida fired to go to the Big Ten 100% at this point in time. I definitely think they're ready. He straight said things like that. They know the gore, they understand the gore, they've looked it over, and if there was how you try to put it, I'm paraphrasing here because I'm gonna have to go back on the video and really get into the nuts and bolts and get details to come back with quotes for another show. But for right now, the gist was they know the gore inside and out, and they're not. That's not the article that they're worried about in terms of getting in their way of leaving. So there's something else out there that they're taking on, according to those words, whether it be an exit fee or whatever. But the gore does not seem to be an issue to him. He talked about geography isn't as big of a deal as it used to be.
Right.
nice if their games were nearby. And when he's saying this, he's talking SEC. He says, but if it comes down to having to get on a plane and fly and go around, that's fine too. And so he was absolutely saying, we're not afraid to join the Big Ten. We're not afraid to tackle the, across the nation games. And he went into a lot about education. He went into that they were 5 years away from AAU status. And that's pretty much a direct quote right there. I got that one down. That's stuck in my head. For him to say that, that's a call. That we know what that's calling to.
Let me ask you something on that, on
Yeah.
the AAU. And I know Moen has spoken about this in the past. By the way, if you're new to the show, please subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment or question, and we'll definitely try to get to that once the show's over and in the coming days and weeks. So AAU, and this can be for both of you, but Immaculate's primarily to you to start. There's been verbiage out there that said the AAU is not required to go into the Big Ten.
It's not.
Outside of the requirement or non-requirement, which I think everybody says is won't hold anything up. What is the impending urgency to get something like that done in any amount of time, let alone in 3 to 5 years?
Well, there's always an urgency to get it from a research standpoint, because the moment you get it, your growth prospects in those fields go up pretty massively. And I'm pretty sure Moen would agree and attest to that by being part of that group and the connections you make within that group, whatever it is you're aiming to do is going to be much more possible.
Okay.
So it's not necessary. And I'll make this statement. If you were to compare Florida State and Miami, I think it's more necessary for Miami to have AAU status in order for them to get in with the Big Ten than it is for FSU, because FSU has other aspects that are much stronger than Miami.
Well, Miami is a private school. So
private school.
Yeah.
Miami has stadium issues right now. Florida State has plans to rebuild theirs, or they're already working on it. And from the sounds, he talked about it in this too. And that was more important than I think most people realize, because right now, one of the main aspects to getting in with the big conferences is, what is your stadium like? Because these are TV networks. How it looks on TV means a lot. FSU is going to have a smaller stadium than they have now in terms of capacity, but it's all about providing the more of the creature comforts that people want now. And obviously these new ones, they're going to make them so much better looking. Look at how much Northwestern is spending for a 35,000 or 40,000 person stadium.
Right.
It's about how it looks and feels and sounds on game day, because they want that experience for someone watching to be as good as possible. So everything he was saying was, these guys have been working on it. This isn't just something they just popped up doing right now. I mean, this is part of a longer plan.
Moen?
Yeah, I think the AAU thing, he said it, if you go back and watch the interview, he said what's best for our institution. He didn't just say athletics, he said institution.
Yeah.
And he specifically brought up how they've sort of been hamstrung from doing clinical research, which is a big part of the AAU, because of legislation that benefited the University of Florida.
Okay. All right.
So AAU is a big deal, but more importantly, brand is going to trump AAU. If Notre Dame didn't have AAU, Notre Dame would still get in.
Right.
Florida State's going to get in regardless if they have AAU or not. The brand trumps AAU. The brand, the market trumps AAU.
Yeah.
All right, Immaculate. So let's circle back then. You talked about basically the lead up and everything in the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's dive into the bloodletting that's currently occurring in the Pacific time zone. And actually, I think Arizona's Pacific, right? Immaculate, they're still Pacific?
Yeah, I'm here in Arizona, and we're not on Pacific time, but it's basically the same as Pacific time.
That's what I mean. Today, it's the same time. Okay.
Yep.
So now catch us up there.
Well, everyone got real excited about the meeting going on there, the Regents meeting, but it was scheduled to go into closed session. So they started the meeting, and then they immediately went into closed session, and everyone was talking about it. I'm sitting there going, why do people care about that? The story's in Florida. But I think the story of what happened in the morning with the meeting over the pack for their. That's all getting leaked out now, even beyond what certain people seem to have knowledge of yesterday, and that does not look good. I made a comment about how if they're going to have this built upon building subscriptions for Apple in terms of how much they make, that conference can't do it. I mean, they already lost USC and UCLA. They lost Deion Sanders. If Washington and Oregon leave, if Arizona leaves right now, I mean, it's really bad.
That's
I
a
think that
naive attachment, isn't it? Isn't that a naive way of looking at things to say you're going to grow your brand and give access by saying you have to do it through a subscription model? That seems crazy to me.
I think it's evidence that that deal is something that they had been working on for a long time, like probably even before USC and UCLA left.
Okay.
And so they thought that if you were to look at the way the pack was, that yeah, they would get enough attention and looks and all that they could get more people to subscribe to Apple Plus. But that's, I think that's why this is a problem, because they're probably trying to get some better kind of deal or something changed out, and there's just nothing they could do to replace it, and it's not geared for this conference anymore.
Right.
They've lost. Yeah.
Let me interrupt you really quick. We got a new member in the house. That's Danny Reich. How you doing, Danny? Thanks for being here, and a new member. Really appreciate that. I'll give you a standing clap as I'm sitting here in my chair. Appreciate you joining, and please feel free to leave comments. I get to those subscribers first, and we want to thank you for being part of the family. It makes a big difference. And I also, while I've got the mic, I want to shout out to Sergeant Pickles, who thinks that I have a Rainiers hat behind me. That's a Seahawks hat and a Richland Bombers hat. So anyway, just to be clear. All right, go ahead, Immaculate. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, you're fine. So basically, to get to the gist of it, I do believe that Arizona is probably leaving this week. They just had a meeting with the pack, and then immediately afterwards,
that's the ADs and the presidents and chancellors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then immediately they have their board meeting that goes into executive session. They do need to announce 24 hours in advance. So even if they were announced right now, it wouldn't be till late tomorrow in a meeting. So I think you might see something announced, or you'll see something tomorrow, so that way they could have a Thursday or maybe a Friday meeting.
Remind me, how did Colorado's go? It was a Wednesday meeting announced on Tuesday night, and then Thursday was the BOR. Is that right?
Yeah, they went pretty quick. I thought it was going to be like the first one was right on, and I thought that they would have like a Friday announcement, but they didn't waste time. They went as fast as they could, because you got to have 24 hours on these announcements.
So, right.
And some people are saying that the board doesn't have to get together again. But
yes,
I kind of thought
that's what I heard too.
They would have to have a vote, but it might be different here in Arizona. Maybe they've empowered the presidents to just make that call on their own. I don't know. We'll find out, maybe within a day or two here. But I definitely think Arizona is going first, because I have serious questions. Apologies to anyone listening who's an Arizona fan, but I have serious questions that they would still get the deal if they're not next, because Fox was trying to say that only one more is getting the full pro rata, and I don't know if Arizona is worth extending that. But I think if you get in some other brands, like, I don't know, say Arizona State and Utah, with a massive market and size of Arizona State, along with the prowess of Utah football and whatnot,
right,
I think that they would get that extended, and they would get two more teams. So I think we're probably going to see like Arizona first. Then I think Washington and Oregon to the Big Ten. And then Arizona State and Utah will use all of that as their reasoning for pulling out.
So between that, and we're waiting for Chris Cash to join us. So that he's going to be our next Fox in the Hen House. But if we're talking about these things sort of closing very quickly, and we think back the last 3 weeks, at the beginning of July, let's say, of you two, who believed we would be here today? I'm going to say mine first. I believe that we would have had Arizona and Colorado done, and I thought by the end of August we would have Utah and ASU done. What do you guys think?
Moen?
I think that's probably being generous by the end of August for I think it would have been. I think it still might end up being a package where all three go to the Big 12 in unison.
So you think like tomorrow, if they were to plan something, they would do it all in
well,
one
no,
step?
not now.
No.
Not now.
Oh,
Not after that
okay.
Florida
Okay.
State interview. After that
Oh,
Florida
okay.
State interview, everybody's saying, "Whoa, hold up," because a lot of what we were hearing was that if Arizona went to the Big 12 and ASU had to stay behind, Arizona would have to make up the difference with Arizona State's revenue the same way Cal and UCLA are. Well,
Right.
think about this. What if Florida State joins the Big 10 and they need that fifth West Coast team and decide it's Arizona State? Would Arizona State then have to pay the difference to Arizona in the Big 12?
I don't think so.
It's
That's a good question,
role
actually.
reverse. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's that's how quick this has changed. This has
Right.
flipped just completely in such a way that nobody could have anticipated this happening. We figured Colorado was leaving.
Right.
We figured that. That made total sense.
Hmm.
They used to be a Big 12 team. They're going back to the Big 12. Makes a lot of sense. Exposure, Coach Prime, okay. Arizona, totally makes sense. Totally. Basketball program, Big 12 is the best basketball conference. Today, Florida State and Clemson are joining the Big 10. Could be joining the Big 10. I'm not going to say
Right.
it is 100%.
Caveat.
Florida
in there.
State, yeah, caveat. Florida State and Clemson can be joining the Big 10. I have to keep repeating it myself because it sounds so unbelievable.
It does seem pretty extreme. I agree with you 100%, Moen. All right. Let Immaculate, and then we'll see if this bearded guy wants to participate or if he just came to watch. Go ahead, Immaculate.
In terms of what I thought, everything is going much faster than I thought. And I had theories laid out for all the way up to 25 teams, 5 divisions, conference playoffs, all kinds of stuff that I had laid out.
Right.
And this is surpassing it. And that's what's blowing my mind, is because I was the crazy guy. And
you were, actually. I remember those days.
Yeah,
2
and I
weeks
totally
ago.
saw the difference. Now I can definitely see the difference from Greg Flugar, how he talks.
Right.
It's so funny because he used to think that was just crazy talk. I was like, all right, just watch, just wait. And now, anyways,
It's
but
true.
still, the point being, it's going faster. I was on here saying, listen to Kirk Herbstreit, what he's saying for 2024, at least 20 per conference is what he said. And I said, at least 20 per conference means more than 20. And people were just like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. Well, here we are. I mean, but I had no idea that he might have meant we're going to know by 2024 because it's happening in 2023.
Right. What you thought that was a stepped approach, meaning the next step, not the end goal. Yeah.
Not like you'll know next year by
sure. That's right.
Lord.
Exactly. Danny, who's a new subscriber, I think everybody here has heard me say that. He's got his first comment in as a subscriber. He says, suppose the ACC ends in 24. By the way, I'm not sure if that's the final get today, but we'll research that a little bit. Also, Oregon is not wanted by the Big due to research. Moen, we'll have you address that as soon as Chris gets his piece. Further, Stanford declines Big to share the research. We've spoken about that on this show several times, how Stanford, they're not nice in the playground. They don't like to share. SEC and Big grow to 24, which is what we've been talking about on this show for months now. What does the Big 12 look like?
Well, first I'll just say this and then I'll leave it to the others. Congrats to Danny for having a solid knowledge.
Well, that's our group. Those are our fans, right?
I know, and
I'm
saying these details are sticking, right? Like you can't go out very many places and see him not think that Stanford is a perfect fit for the Big Ten.
Right.
Okay. But anyways, yeah, I'll let you guys go on that and see what Chris has to think. I'm very curious on that too.
All right,
Right.
Chris, why don't you answer? You come in and you get the toughest question.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you what. I think the Big 12 ends up with the full buffet of four corners, and I'm actually surprised that right now we haven't heard from both Arizona schools announcing that they're joining the Big 12 or at least leaving the Pac-12. I mean, after everything that's gone on and everybody trying to sell someone on 100% streaming or damn near close to 100% streaming, it's not worth it. When you look at your competitors, they're on linear TV. Why? Why would you even risk not being in the same field of competition as the rest of everybody else? Like, you have to go.
What did you think about this disaster of a set of meetings that the Pac-12 has had? They had one 2 weeks ago that was a disaster. Then they had one last week that was a disaster. And now the one this week. I mean, at what point do we say, let's quit holding meetings?
Right? It's par for the course. It's what they do. And what happens when things get tough? They send us a little love letter. Yeah, we're
The
all
blue and white letters.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're going to stick together. It's going to be a good time. But how embarrassing is this, right? 14 months ago, the Pac-12 had 12 schools. They had the LA market. They had the Denver market. They've lost that. Those are huge losses. And George, it's on you. It all falls on your shoulders.
I've been saying that since the beginning. It's Klyavkov all the way. He blamed the other guy. I don't even say his name anymore. And he muzzled this from the beginning.
He did. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's way over his head. And for you to lose, I mean, CU is not like an elite football team in the Pac. They haven't been. They had one winning season and then 2 seasons where they only totaled 1 wins. Like, they're
right.
You're not really losing anything. And so, like, June 30th, if CU would have left on June 30th, the Pac-12 just adds San Diego State, adds Colorado State. It's a pretty smooth transition. But CU waited. They waited all the way until after Pac-12 Media Singular Day, and then busted out a few days. And then busted out a few days later, right?
Right.
Which made it impossible for the Pac to expand.
Yes.
Right. So when everybody's looking, I'm like, well, we're going to get, even if you had ESPN and Fox and Apple and Amazon, everybody on the same page, who's paying the $34 million exit fees for the Mountain West schools?
Nobody.
Nobody is.
Nobody.
And if I'm a Mountain West school, why would I go and say, hey, why would I pay $17 million, $34 million, or $1 million to come join the Pac? I can wait you out, and then you can come join me for free, and then we can go back and ask Fox for an extension and try to get more money out of Fox, and at least we still have linear TV. You know, I mean, the Mountain West has a better TV deal. That's the sad part. So when everybody's talking about expanding, no, the Pac's done. It's just done. It's on life support, and we're all negotiating who's going to pull the plug. Is Arizona pulling the plug? Arizona State pulling the plug? Or Arizona State, Utah pulling the plug? It's done. It's over with. Like,
Who's
I don't
the last
see,
guy out the room? That's the question. Who's the last one in?
Say your goodbyes, say your prayers, go to the Big 12, and you got to make the Big 12 great. I mean, from the Pac-12 arrogance side, when you look at the brands, that's what's so boggling is that you had Oregon and Washington, the LA schools, Arizona schools, depending on which sports season, Colorado and their history, Utah and their Rose Bowls. How do you screw that up? Now it's like we're going to all go to the Big 12 and all look to rebrand ourselves as who's going to be the flagship or flagships of the Big 12.
I think that's the beauty, though, is that because it is a new rebranded league, 16 teams, it's going to be awesome because everybody's going to get the same opportunity, the same amount of access. And there's no, again, my favorite saying, sacred cows. There's nobody there to say you can't do something. So I think it's a wonderful thing. Everybody gets to start over fresh, and I think it'll be so fun.
Well, imagine Utah coming in, right? Already having beef with you, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Bring back the Holy War. And then they're going to come in and flex because that's what Utah does. And they're going to go up to TCU and say, well, we're better than you. And TCU is going to be like, we just played in a championship. And Utah's going to be like, we don't care. We're a 2-time Rose Bowl. And then you're going to have Cincinnati going, yo, we were in the playoffs 2 years ago.
Yes.
So you do have some weight and some people to kind of flex and throw things around. But it's just like, why are we waiting?
Yes.
Who cares if you pull the string? The string was already pulled by USC. Point your fingers at USC. Point your fingers at Fox. Well, you can't play Fox because they're paying you. But blame USC. Blame USC and just go on about your day. This is USC's fault. The pack could have been great, and we're going to walk out. Pulling Amari Stoudemire when he left the Suns.
Right,
Suns won a
exactly.
championship, but the Knicks were going to pay me the money, and the Suns didn't want to pay me.
Right.
Right.
All right. Well, let me get a few little items in here. First, R Webb is in the house. Hey, R Webb, it's good to see you. He gave us a super chat, and he says the deal's like having a 3-to-1 arm and living off a commission at a Retta Center. How many times have we heard that story where you're this great athlete, but you're, putting bags of groceries in people's cars? It's a classic story, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But really quick, so everybody knows, if you want your comment to be read like our web, we do super chats. You can also subscribe, and we try to get to as many of those super chats and subscribed comments as we can. We don't make any promises, because at this point we're into the hundreds and hundreds of comments, and we're over 100 viewers at the same time. So guys, we really, really appreciate it, and I want to be thankful, or want you guys to know that I'm very thankful that you were here to share your time this evening. So let's take the next step. Do all four of us, and I think I'm all in. Are we looking at this 2024 change, Florida State and Clemson to the Big Ten, the Four Corners to the Big 12, and that's where we kick off in 24?
Yeah. And I would say Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten as well.
Oh, sorry, I misspoke. Yeah, I meant Oregon, Washington. Yeah, sorry.
Adam, I mean, at some point, it's just like, when you're having a going out of business sale, and you try to time your going out of business sale to get the right deal, right?
Right.
But you don't want to wait too long, because what you want is going to be gone. And that's what this looks like. So when you're looking at the Big Ten and the Big 12, they're the two closest conferences to the pack. You got to get the schools that you need right away before somebody steps in and does something, because it could happen. And I just point to the Big 12. They were down to 8 schools and survived, somehow survived. And you don't want a situation to go on where somebody comes up with this wacky but brilliant idea that makes the pack survive, because now they can compete, right? They have the brands, they have the cities, they have the population, they can do it. It's never going to I doubt it will ever happen. But why even risk it? Go out, take your schools. Then we'll see what happens with the ACC. Does the ACC break loose? I'm as I've said, I'm still a little skeptical of it. But if it breaks loose, now the Big Ten is going to turn their attention to the ACC. Now the Big 12 is going to try to get something. The SEC is definitely going to try to get something. So you have 3 conferences over there, and the Pac schools are going to be sitting there going, I thought you guys liked us. Well,
No.
You waited too long.
Yeah, they're going to be eaten last, and pretty soon the conference is going to be irrelevant. All right, Immaculate and Moen, I don't care what order. What do you guys think about all this? And by the way, feel free to ask Chris questions, because he represents ASU, and I really appreciate his loyalty.
I do have a question for him before I go into a long answer, if you don't mind. How much do you feel like your intelligence and all of ours collectively has been insulted by them coming out and saying that part of that deal is it goes to 12 and it's about expansion and they have expansion targets, when everything we've seen is that the Mountain West, for them to get anyone there for next year, which you need it by, you need someone next year, would cost $34 million. Who thinks any Mountain West team is going to go find $34 million to come join you next year, when the conference may only be half of what it is or a quarter of what it is? Like, how can they say this stuff and actually think that we're going to believe it at this point?
Well, it's embarrassing. But here's the other thing that doesn't really get talked about. 2024, June 30th, 2024, the pack deal is done. It's over with. And CU's going to be gone. LA schools are going to be gone. And maybe 1 or 2 other schools are going to be gone. But they're not going to have a TV deal to play in. Are they just taking the year off? Like, what are they going to do? There really is no more pack conference. And kicking the can down the road isn't going to do anything, because all Fox and ESPN is going to do is like, look, we'll just pay you $10 million per school. You can do it for 1 more year. And then after that, we can talk about expansion. Nobody's going to buy into that. It'd be a waste of time. So I think it's insulting all of us to think that we're that stupid. We've been telling people forever that someone's going to jump, and CU was the first to jump.
So really quick, Chris, who's the stupid one? Is it the fans, or is it the administrators that were strung along by a snake oil salesman that honestly was over his head the day he took the job?
Dude, it's the administrators, man. George pulled the wool over everybody's eyes, and they just enjoyed it, and everybody tried to politic to get close to George. How many jokes about Crow getting close to Larry Scott and getting close to George? It's like, how many times are you going to hold this guy's hand to the point where, it ain't working. You lost 3 schools in 14 months. I mean, that's unheard of. That's absolutely unheard of. And, I used to talk about the Big 12 going, well, they've only added G5s. Well, now they have a P5. Now they're close to getting 3 more P5s. And we're all moving on. And so George is going to be sitting there going, well, guys, gosh, I tried my best.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. I'm not sure how much George could have done more than what he did, just because the situation was already pretty bad.
Right.
But the job that he's done PR wise in trying to go through this it's been negligent.
Well, wouldn't you think if you walked into a bad situation, you would go to your schools and say, look, Larry was awful. I think we can all agree with this. What can I do to right this ship?
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think he ever had that conversation. I think he just felt like, look, Larry's gone. I'm the guy. We're moving forward. And he was arrogant. He was just cocky and arrogant. And it doesn't matter how many times he took a sword to the back. He just kept moving forward like he wasn't feeling it.
Yeah. And you could definitely see kind of this air of belief, right? We're the pack. This doesn't happen to us. And it's just kind of like it could happen to anyone who's in a position of weakness. You just couldn't recognize that you're weak, that your geographically positioned was weak. And I just think there was just really bad strategic planning on their part.
There was a lot of stuff that went wrong. Let me get this comment really quick from Pickles. And I wanted Moen to sort of take on the answer. Is Greg Swaim, friend of the show, says has been stuck saying Oregon and Washington are about to start losing all their good recruits. I think Greg is he likes to exaggerate a little bit. We all know that. But they survived the last decade with the Pac-12 network. They will be fine. So, Moen, what do you think about that? Is this going to basically seal that Pacific Rim? So anybody who tries getting into Oregon, Washington, California now has to go up against this big 4-headed giant?
Well, going back to the previous question about Oregon, it's not just the research issues with Oregon. It's the fact that their athletic department and NIL has managed to piss off everybody in the Big Ten for the last 6 months to a year. They were told not to try and induce students to enter the portal. They did that. They did it to several Big Ten teams. They tried to get people to cancel recruiting visits, official visits, people they had no interest in. So if Oregon's losing recruits, I ain't losing any sleep. That's what hurt them more than anything else. Are they going to get in the Big Ten? Yeah, probably. They're a brand, and Phil Knight has money.
Right.
So they're getting in. Washington it's not a blue blood, but they're pretty well received in terms of history in football.
Right.
I mean, they've got 3 national championships, very big research institutes, great hospital system. So they're a slam dunk. But Oregon's getting in on branded money. So, and now we got to figure out who the number 5 is. Because, I mean, number 5 and number 6. Because does Cal break from Stanford? I mean, are these schools? I see Arizona could go quick.
Yep.
So if Arizona goes quick and it's not a package deal, boy, I don't know if those schools are waiting to see if a Big Ten invite's coming, but that would be foolhardy in my opinion. If you think a big invite might be coming, you'll have the money to get out of the Big 12.
I think you have to take that attitude.
Yeah, you got to take the must.
Yes. Yeah.
Take down the small pot. If you hit the jackpot, great, but
Exactly.
don't pass up the what you can get chasing. Don't chase it. It might
Dude,
fall to you, but don't
agree.
chase it.
Well, you know what's funny is I've had this conversation with some friends, and it's like if the Big 12 gets aggressive and goes after the rest of the four corners, or maybe even a Cal, include that in there, you're blocking Big 10 westward expansion. And I think that's important. If you want to have a Power 3, then you go in, you expand westward, ignore the ACC for a little bit because the Big 10 is going to want to get them. The SEC is going to want to get them. If you can just shore up that West and you're a Western Southern Conference, that's going to make you very, very strong. You're going to block the Big 10 from expanding. Same goes for the Big 10. If you are still in the mindset of trying to squash the Big 12, then you have to go get the other schools. But you can't wait. This game of chicken, it's got to end at some point, and it's got to end, God, in what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's going to be quick. There's not – the time is running out because they want to look at August 15th, obviously for the ACC. That's a big date. And then we're coming up against football season, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys don't want to be dealing with this stuff if they don't have to. Sergeant Pickles, I think this is a great thought and concern that basically all the Pac-12 – this is the attitude the fans were put in a position where they had to defend a very indefensible position, and it's just criminal what you guys have been put through. He says, my mistake in defending the Pac was using common sense in short supply in the presidents, and I've been preaching common sense since I started my show in April. So yeah, it has been in short supply for sure.
Could I touch upon the ASU bit?
Yeah, sure,
yeah,
please
Chris
do.
Here.
Yeah, please.
I live here in Scottsdale, so I follow the Devils. I'm here locally, right? I want them to succeed. I'm really excited for Dillingham coming in. I want to see this have some economic success here locally. I think because of everything that's happened, my position on ASU to the Big Ten has changed. I think that they need to go join the Big 12.
Yeah.
I think with what's coming in 2024, with you having nothing, it's a risk. It's a risk to sit and wait for the Big Ten. And then once you do, you're going to be put into a division with USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. And that sounds great for money. That's a great spot for research, no doubt. And if you can get it, and if they think they can get it, then maybe they should wait. But if they haven't had any word at all on it, then you go to the Big 12 now. You go there with this brand new young head coach who's got all the connections locally, and you win. You go in there and you smoke it out. And if things get to the point in the future where you really want to join the Big 10, you find the money, you pay the exit fee, and you're out of there.
Yeah.
We're finding out through FSU, okay, it's a problem, but it's not a big problem. You can get around it. And by the time we see the money that the Big Ten has, it won't matter. Yep. Whatever it is, you'll do whatever. So I say right now, protect yourself, ASU. Protect yourself. Get into the Big 12 now. It's going to be a great league to be a part of, and I think that ASU can have very quick success there in 2024 because that'll be Dillingham's second year.
Yep.
I say go with it.
I totally agree.
That point is big, I think, for all four corners that come in pretty full of themselves, right? Got that pack attitude. And we're going to find out. There was a lot of talk before about the competition between the leagues and really the competition between the schools and the quality of their games. Now we're going to find out if those games are, if they can walk the walk, because they certainly talk the talk. We've got Jeff Fuller here. Jeff's joined us I've only got a half hour, so we're going to have to talk quick. Jeff, start us off. You've looked at both the ACC and the Pac-12. You've been tracking it for months and even years now in some cases.
Yeah.
Start with the ACC, work your way through the Pac, and then there is one final question I want to know. Do you think that all four corners move by the end of August?
I'll start with the final thing. I think yes. I think it'll probably be one at a time, or Arizona will come first, but I think there will be a quick plan for the other two to come. But yeah, I don't see it going beyond 2 or 3 weeks for all of them. But we'll see. I mean, that media deal that leaked was sort of not so rosy. I've heard 22 million is sort of the highest guaranteed, and I don't know if that's after adding schools. I would think that would just be the remaining 9 schools, and then you bring in dilutive brands after that. Yeah, they'll take lesser shares, and in the short term, all those schools that would probably be looking to exit for other conferences anyways may not have to deal with it. But I think it makes it harder to bring in the other schools and stay relevant. Are they going to want to sign on to a streaming only Apple TV deal? So that'll be interesting to see. I think talking since we're talking ACC mostly and Florida State, it's I was just on Greg's show about 15 minutes ago, the Peek Around the Corner, and we talked a little bit about that. That's the main gist of that show, that because this is earth shattering. We're talking about massive fan bases, and in the Southeast, and all the SEC fans and Big Ten fans, poking up their heads and paying attention, because this is these are possibly seismic shifts. If that grant of rights that's been rock solid, that no one thought was touchable for another 13 years, if that's challenged and broken, and ESPN plays ball or decides not to play ball, or they get enough schools together to just break it all apart, it's fascinating. It's a little scary. I think as you talked about, we hear that some Arizona State and Utah folk think they're maybe primed to be picked up along with Oregon and Washington into the Big Ten. Boy, that's I think if you look at all the brands that say the Big Ten could take their pick of everyone, I think Arizona State and Utah don't even make the top 10, unfortunately, of what's available when you count Florida State, Oregon, Washington. They may even want Stanford above some of those some of the other Pac brands, but you've got Miami, you've got North Carolina, you've got some Virginia schools. And I think there was even a rumor about Vanderbilt being checked out by the Big Ten as well. I think I saw something about that.
That's got to be tongue in cheek.
There was something today, and it looked like it was a real report, but
I know.
I haven't gotten into it too far, and it did look like it was a real report.
Moen, bring some sanity to the room. There's no way Vanderbilt.
No, we're not.
Okay,
we're not going to add Vanderbilt, but I would go and say this. Right. You're right. There's a lot of great, valuable brands out there. But how many?
I would say they may add Vanderbilt if they kicked out Northwestern because of all this.
Now here we go. Talk about conspiracies.
It is. That's the whole. We need a private university to hold our private meetings conspiracy right there.
Exactly.
Right.
Maybe the conference room is what you need. Actually.
It's why all the main ones have had one private university the entire time.
That's crazy. All right, keep going, Jeff. I think you had a little bit more in you.
Sure. Just looking at brands. Been looking. A lot of people love to bring up ratings, and ratings are super important. Your TV ratings. It's such a complex metric to really assess brand value and fan base size, because it's so dependent on your success that year, who you're matching up against. A lot of schools have these great average ratings. Like Northwestern and Vanderbilt may have some pretty good average ratings, but it's not because of their great fan bases or they're great markets. It's because they're playing Alabama, or they're playing Ohio State and Michigan, and so I've and a lot of the ranking systems do your average rated game, and most of the games will go on unrated stations like the SEC Network or maybe some of the other smaller, Big Ten Network or others, which I have seen Big Ten Network starting to get some rated games. I don't know if that's a pick and choose kind of situation, or if they're starting to sort of produce all their ratings through Nielsen. But I like to look at the, other things that are more equitable, like social media. I know it's a newer thing. It sort of taps into your younger fan base, but if you're, if you've got an engaged, excited fan base like UCF, young, engaged, excited fan base, they do great on all these social media metrics. But that you've just got the massive brands. Ohio State blows everyone away, and social media. I've done some studies where you aggregate all the social media interactions from all the different teams. men's, women's basketball, even getting hockey and everything. There's this website called Skull Sparks that produces these interactions per month, and then they have a summation at the end of the year, and then they compare it to years before and do percentage change. And I've been able to aggregate a lot of that data and look at it. And actually, Duke is a top 10 social interaction complete athletic department in the nation. They're far and away number one in basketball, but if football runs the show, but Duke basketball, it moves the needle on social media at least. And I assume there's some degree that it does that on ratings on TV, but it's just a massive brand. And so that's sort of the wild card. Greg and I were talking about that a little bit. Is Duke really a candidate for the Big Ten or the SEC, or are they going to be one of those leftovers that says, Big 12's got that best basketball conference, or are we going to go there?
Let me ask you this Terrence Newman question or statement. It's easy to pile on, but this is about media consolidation, which all of us here have talked about several times, and we all agree with that. For the bottom line, why would ESPN or Fox offer the package deal when they know they get that content when they join the Big 12 or the Big 10? Anybody disagree that consolidation is driving 95% of this?
Yeah. I'll make a quick comment and then I'll pass it off. I talked on Greg's show a couple of days ago about, Western Civic was calling in and talking about relegation, that, Colorado and Arizona were being relegated to the Big 12, being shoved down there because they just aren't good enough in football. So they're fleeing the Pac-12 and being kicked out essentially. And we all know that's a bunch of hogwash, but I think he is onto something with relegation. I think conferences might be relegated at this point away from the power status. And that's what's happening to the Pac-12 over the last year and a half. And it might happen to the ACC if, enough of these brands do end up in the SEC and Big Ten, where else, they're not going to add from the Big 12 or anywhere else, bring up Sunbelt or AAC teams. The ACC might end up being a relegated conference as well if we do end up with three, as it's looking more and more likely. But I'd love to hear what others have to say.
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to be in an A3 status, Jeff. Definitely. But let's get some opinions. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Just jump back real quick. I don't think ASU to the Big Ten is for so much ASU being a football player, more of a football partner for USC to kind of kick around. I think it's more President Crow and the regents going, we can go get Big Ten money, and then we can use that for this. I think it's a money move, and it's only for the region. It's a regional move for USC because they have no regional partners. That's the only reason I've ever seen ASU brought up. ASU should go to the Big 12 quickly as possible with that. But yeah, they're subtracting schools, and it's all football. And, I always hear the argument like UConn. We hear UConn all the time. Well, they're a basketball school. One, they don't need to go to a power conference to be a great basketball school. They prove that. It doesn't really, from a basketball standpoint, it doesn't really do anything. And then the Big 12 is already one of the top basketball conferences, the top basketball conference in college. So my concern is if we keep adding top basketball programs, University of Arizona, UConn, Colorado is a decent basketball program. You keep adding these. At some point, you get to the point where recruits aren't going to go to those schools, and they're only good basketball schools in name. They're no longer going to be basketball schools. You have to have winners. You have to have losers. And I don't know if it's going to be parity where it's going to fluctuate up and down because they are good programs, or it just kind of dies off because you either are a good program, you can maintain it, or you can't. That's where I see that. But I think from a football standpoint, Joel Klatt was bringing it up for Fox. They're trying to cut back. So if the four corners go into the Big 12, Oregon, Washington, they go into the Big 10, Oregon State, Washington State, go Mountain West. And I don't know what happens in Cal Stanford. And then what happens in the ACC?
I think you're going to end up with about 5 or 6 teams that it's going to be touch and go. Depending on what the need is, they might end up in any number of different destinations. So
I'll ask you this question: Who from the ACC do you think would join the Big 12?
Louisville.
But actually, I'm gonna let Moen answer that because he has the answer.
Okay.
who would join the Big 12. I think you'd have Louisville, Pitt, Syracuse. Depending on what happens with the Virginia law, I think Virginia Tech's a fit in the Big 12, but
Yeah.
they may be tied to UVA.
Yeah,
and I don't
that's
know
what I've
that
heard too.
UVA would go to the. Yeah, I don't know that UVA would go to the Big 12.
Has anybody heard of a law though that I've heard this rumor for decades?
Their AG put it out that there would be his office would do investigations if.
Yeah, they tried it in Texas, it didn't work. They tried it in Washington, it didn't work. They tried it in Oregon, it didn't work. I don't know on one occasion where a law held off from one school being separated from another within the state. There's all been threats.
I think those were laws that were coming up through the legislature. I think Virginia might be a little different because you have an attorney general who's threatening to take legal action. So it's a little different. It might frighten the conferences or the schools from who knows. Yeah, it's
I don't know.
I think
How about you?
I was just saying, I think it goes back to Texas, back when Baylor had people politically connected, and they got Texas and Texas A&M to be forced to bring Texas Tech and Baylor with them to which was the Big 8 that became the Big 12. That was supposed to be like the Big 10 2.0 is what they wanted to do with Texas and Texas A&M, and then the Texas legislature got involved.
But again, wasn't an actual law put into action?
It was not. It was all it was all behind the scenes.
Threat. Okay,
like power
that's
threats.
What I thought.
Not a law. I'm not saying there's a law, but I think that's why this keeps coming up.
Okay. Andrew Barchak is one of our subscribers, but also is giving us a super chat here. And by the way, we've got about 15 minutes or so, maybe a little more than that. If you want your comment or suggestion to be talked about on the show, it'll have to be a super chat. I will try to work through some of these and see if I can get some more comments in. But these panels, if you're new to the show, please subscribe for one. And everybody who's listening right now, turn on your notifications so you don't miss the show. I've had quite a few people saying they never know when the show is going to be on. And I'm like, well, do you have your notifications turned on? So I can't control your notifications, people. So if you want to be reminded when the show's on, please turn on your notifications, subscribe. And then if you want to be part of the community, I do have subscription plans. You can go to the Big 12 Mafia site on YouTube, hit the join button, it's the middle of the screen, and it'll walk you through the different subscription models. Andrew Barchak for $5 says, what are the odds of, and everybody's going to answer if you want to answer, what are the odds big coming for teams in the Big 12 if they jump now? And I'm going to answer mine. I think they could do it. I will say could, but I don't think that's going to be for a while. Now, Moen's going to disagree with me, but I'm going to say it probably won't happen before probably 29 or 30. But that's my estimate. Immaculate, you haven't spoken for a minute. Why don't you answer next?
Oh, I think we kind of touched upon this a bit, that I do think that there is potential for it in the future. It kind of sounds like from leaks that Yormark is going to make that as expensive as possible, and he probably knows that doesn't stop it from happening. Right. But what it does is it gives them a nice little bump in cash to go do whatever other things he wants to do. So this is his play. He's not going to play nice and easy and, we'll take these guys and you can take them whenever you want. You're going to have to pay us a lot. But that could work out fine for him. I don't know. I don't think that's going to end up happening, though. But we'll see how it goes.
Do you have a year estimate
on when they might come for Big 12?
Yeah.
Oof. My estimates have been not perfect as of now.
Nobody else's have been perfect either. Don't worry about that.
I'm just saying things have been going faster than estimated, but you're going to need some time once they do whatever's going to happen in the East, because I think that's going to be big. And that's why I think the schools in the West right now, they need to get somewhere because they have the problem of next year. And they might be there for at least a couple years, 2 to 3 years. Because these schools, what's going on with the ACC and the Big Ten, those moves aren't going to happen for 2 years after announcement.
Okay.
Whereas the Pac schools have to happen immediately.
Yeah.
So I would say at least 3 years, if not 4 or 5. I mean, it's not an immediate thing to worry about. I mean, for ASU, you got a first year head coach. You got to get somewhere. You got to get in there. Got to start figuring out what you're going to do with that. That's where I would go, and I wouldn't worry about there being some call up in a couple of years.
Okay, Moen.
I've got a quick
sorry,
question for the panel.
Yeah.
We're talking about consolidation, and I think it was Chris mentioned, Oregon and Oregon State are sort of the left outs for the Pac-12. And I know this is sort of what may be uncomfortable to talk about, but who's left out, who's relegated out of, the power? Obviously, the SEC and the Big Ten brands are Northwestern and Vanderbilt protected, but specifically of the ACC and possibly any Big 12 schools, is how do some of the smaller brands survive, or will they? And who are the sort of low hanging fruit to get plucked off and out of the super leagues?
Boston College, Syracuse, Oregon State, Washington State. I've seen
Wake Forest,
the
smallest fan base in
Yeah,
all of
Wake
Power
Forest
5.
is
I still don't
definitely
know
on
how
it.
they continue to be Power 5.
I think there was one other ACC. Who am I missing?
Duke.
Syracuse, Duke. But I think Duke will go to the Big 12. That's my opinion. I'm not saying it's you guys' opinion.
If I could be like from a Big 12, like starting to really like the Big 12, if I'm a Big 12 person, I'm taking Wake Forest over Duke.
Really?
They got better stadium for TV. Duke Stadium looks like a high school. Wake
You're talking
has
about football.
Yes, and this is football, and Wake Forest is way better than Duke in football every year. They are competitive. They will come after it, and they'll be good for a competition side of things. They do have a history of basketball. If you stick Wake Forest in the Big 12, the best basketball league in the country, they're going to start going after that, and they're going to be the school over there where they can recruit over there. They could be great again. And Duke, culturally, I just don't see it in the Big 12, but I think Wake is good for it. And
They have to go somewhere.
Jeff is right, though. Like, I don't mean to refute anything he's saying about them. They are tiny. You're not getting them for the size. Yeah, I guess you're just getting them because they're going to be competitive. But
So who else we missing then?
I think some of the ones you announced earlier are in, and that's because I think that it's going to be much more difficult for the situation as a whole if ESPN doesn't find them homes. And I think the Big 12 will help with that.
I think the basketball schools could easily go to the Big East.
No, I think Syracuse will definitely get a spot.
Syracuse too?
Into the Big 12, yeah.
Huh.
Remember,
How many?
2028. 2028 is the Big Ten end of their contract. So
Yeah, I know this is part of your plan, your 25 especially immaculate. Some of these schools I don't know. What does everybody else think really quick?
I mean, I agree with those as the contractions. I don't know what's going to happen to Cal. I'm sure Stanford is just going to wait for the Big Ten to eventually get them, possibly when Notre Dame goes Big Ten. But yeah, 2028, when the Big Ten comes calling, I can see them. And it's not necessarily ASU, Utah, or Oregon. It could be BYU. It could be Houston. It can be CU. It could be anybody who can get called with the Big Ten as long as they're playing well. If they're playing well and drawing money,
that'll help.
The Big Ten's going to come. And it is what it is. But
sorry, go ahead, Chris.
But I was going to say on this, I'll finish on this. If the Big 12 is a conference, if Yormark's doing what he's doing and everything keeps going up, the Big 12 could be the conference everybody wants to go to. In this moment today, it's Big 10 and SEC. Nobody's going to argue that. Things fluctuate. When Larry Scott first took over the Pac, everybody was saying, wow, Larry, you're doing a great job. Great conference. You got the Pac-12 network. You're an innovator. And then he crapped the bed, and this is where we're at. So just because the Big 10 and the SEC are safe today doesn't mean 2028, 2030, Big 12 isn't sitting on top.
Right. Moen, you haven't spoken for quite a while, and I'm afraid that I'm going to die from your silence. So I'm going to require you to give us some feedback here.
Okay, so we're going to look at it this way real quick. There are 7 top brands left.
Okay.
Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami, Notre Dame, Oregon, Washington. Let's
Okay.
make the assumption that the Big Ten adds Clemson and Florida State and Oregon and Washington. That leaves 3 out there. They add Notre Dame. That puts them at 21. You still
Okay.
need 3 more schools to get to 24. You have to add more schools in the West. You just have to. I mean, you can't have 4 schools sitting out there and then the next closest one being Nebraska. You're going to add somebody, at least 1, if not 2. So at some point, yeah, the Big's going to have to come after some of those teams. ASU, it would be a market ad. A lot of snowbirds from Big Ten country live in Arizona during the winter. You know, lots of homes with Comcast cable. It's just purely a market ad. My guess would be Arizona State would be the one they would pick off.
Probably.
But I ultimately do seeing the Big 10 is going to go to 24, the Big 12 is going to go to 24, and the SEC is going to go to 20, and every ACC team is going to find a home.
Mhm.
And I know people don't like the idea of Wake Forest in the Big 12, but it might make them soften a little bit to know that they're going to be getting by far the best basketball conference possible.
Right.
Brett Yormark's going to be able to reach his vision of splitting basketball off seriously as a moneymaker for the conference.
Right.
They're going to get the Northeast Corridor. They're going to get New York. They're going to get Connecticut. They're going to get Boston. I mean, it's going to be an A3 world, and it's going to happen before the playoff contract, whatever
Yeah.
happens in 2026.
That's the most
why all
insane
this is
part right there.
happening. That's
Okay.
that's why all this is happening so quickly. Everybody's trying to get it figured out so that they could just have 3 people at the table in 2026 making all the decisions.
Is that what you think, Jeff? You're on mute if you're there. I can unmute you, I guess.
I'm sorry about
Go
that.
ahead. No, you're fine.
I guess I never thought of the Big 12 getting that big. I guess I'm a baby steps kind of guy and less of a grand vision kind of guy.
Right.
So, and I know that's where Moen and Immaculate sort of, they look way down the road, and
That's where they live, Jeff. That's where they
But
live.
we need you to keep us like grounded, though.
Yeah, I still, I don't know. I mean, Wake, I mean, social media, they're I think 15 G5 schools that have more social media interactions than them. Attendance, there's 10 G5 schools that have higher attendance in football and basketball areas. You know, they've been in what was billed as the best basketball conference for years. You know, it's just been the last 5 years that the Big 12 sort of overtaken the ACC as the best basketball conference, and they haven't been thriving there. Why would they thrive in a new best basketball conference? Again, I think they're a great program. They've got that, you know, the Demon Deacon is the creepiest mascot around. So maybe they've got a spot just because of that. But I know there's a lot of tradition and you know, there's this talk about, you know, having the A5 votes and how important that is. And maybe they do get grandfathered in just because of that. But, you know, you got to wonder about, you know, I don't know, just being on the outside looking in forever as a BYU fan and having a bigger fan base and brand than, you know, a lot of these programs. It's been hard to have patience with, you know, a Washington State, with a Vanderbilt, with a Wake Forest, a Boston College. Yeah, they've all had their moments, but if you look at the loyalty of their fan bases and what they bring to realignment and to media deals and to the value, I just, you know, I think they're dilutive, and I don't know if they get in just because of their A5 vote, which some, I forget if that was you, Immaculate, or you, Moen, but I know that was a big thing for one of them. I think it was Immaculate.
It is Immaculate. Yeah. So let me just bring this up. And Earl's one of our subscribers, a great comment. He says, Immaculate, I'm worried about my Cougars. If the SEC and Big Ten goes to 24, do they break off and do their own thing? And we just see the 2 conferences. I'm gonna say we don't believe that, at least not now, in maybe 15 years or so. But an A3, Earl, is what we're thinking about right now. 3 24, 25 team conferences and the Big 12 by far has the best basketball, but they would be the third in a trifecta of power conferences when it came to football. Do you guys want to add anything to that?
I'd say think political complications. We talk about it like, oh, we could do this. Like people talk about relegation and schools getting kicked out. Way too difficult. Not really possible. Same thing with this. I think in order to get schools out of it, you have to see situations like with the PAC and ACC where they're going to disappear. And that consolidates. That's why we call it consolidation. It's just
Right.
they're consolidating. And that's why I think everyone from the ACC is going to get a spot because it helps ESPN to do so. And Big 12 under your mark seems that's their focus. What ESPN wants, we'll do. And then you're going to owe us a favor for it. So
Yeah.
Favors
yeah.
is a big
that
thing. Go ahead, Moen.
that's it's just saying that's why I think Wake Forest, not because like everything he's saying isn't right, because it's all right. I just think that's one of those favors. And so you have to
You're
find
looking
ways.
at
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Immaculate. Finish
I
up.
was going to say that's why you find ways to sell them. That's why I'm doing that. It's not that I'm like I could be wrong, but it's like, okay, if they're going to try to find ways to sell them to the Big 12, this is how I would sell Wake Forest to the Big 12. Whether it sells or not, that's up to others to decide.
All right, Moen.
Right. I think if you're looking at Wake Forest, it's just you got to think of this like a puzzle, guys. You can't take a piece and look at a small piece and say, well, this is insignificant. You got to look at all the pieces put together. A 2014 Big 12, I know it seems strange, but it allows you to ease travel worries for people. You've got regional divisions. You get regional rivalries. You get a Big 12 network. There's a lot of benefits to the Big 12 by going to 24. And just like Immaculate said, it's consolidation, it's absorption. These conferences on the West and East Coast are being absorbed into three other conferences. So, but yeah, you can't just look at it and say Wake Forest doesn't. And yeah, Wake Forest is a tiny school with. I get all that. I'm not denying that, but it's all part of a bigger picture. And I know that's sometimes hard to look at it when you just kind of look at it from that one tiny piece of information. But that's all I had to say.
What do you think about this comment here from Wayne Gerbach? Says, I too can't ever see Duke in the Big 12, regardless of basketball, meaning the best basketball league. They are an East Coast version of Stanford. I've just really been an admirer of Duke from afar. Them in North Carolina, that rivalry, there's nothing that's better. There's certainly a lot of peers, but that rivalry is big. Do you guys all agree with this assessment of Duke?
Quick comment here. I'm a physician in the South, and so Duke is a highly respected medical facility. I did interview there for fellowship, and they do have a great program in what I do. It's interesting. The joke is on a Duke grad. When you meet a Duke grad, you usually find out about it within the first 3 sentences of meeting them. So they're very proud of their affiliation with Duke. It's hard to get into as an undergrad, if their graduate programs, medical school. I mean, it's a great, and they do call it the Harvard of the South. For medicine at least. So. Yeah, I mean they do have academic creds, and I agree that it. I don't know. They're not as good as Stanford. If you look at all the metrics, Stanford's by far the top FBS academic institution, by far, just about every way you can slice it. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what others say about Duke. I think it fits basketball wise, but yeah, I don't know if they come in because of the perception of lesser academics, which this may be raising. We've got Colorado as an AAU, we've got Arizona coming in likely as an AAU, and if other ACC schools come, there may be cover to make that move.
Right. So this is normally I would let everybody go around. I'll still let you go around, but just knowing this will probably be the last time you get to talk because I do have to go early tonight. But we're going to start with Chris, and then we'll go to Moen, and then we'll finish with you, Immaculate. Or Jeff, actually, did you want to say anything else? You sure? Okay. All right. Go ahead, Chris.
So, I mean, first of all, does it count that ASU has Bobby Hurley?
No. Okay, move along. Let's go.
All right. So
TikTok.
I'm still going to stick with it. The four corners are going to end up in the Big 12. I think that's just what it is. That's going to cause Oregon and Washington to go to the Big 10. We'll all kind of keep eyes on Stanford and Cal, but because the Big 12 is pretty much solidified, I think we're not going to care anymore as much. If the ACC does get a breakup, I can see, man, almost, I would say a little more than a third go to the Big and the SEC, and then I'm wondering if whatever's left over of the ACC tries to form another conference. You know, there are some matches like Louisville, Pitt, the backyard brawl, bringing that into the Big 12. I like rivalries. So if you bring in the Territorial Cup, the Holy War, backyard brawl, I mean, it's must-see TV, right? And that's what we want. That's what we're here for. We always talk about viewership. We talk about people putting butts in seats. Territorial Cup, Holy War, backyard brawl, and any other rivalries that I'm unaware of in the Big 12, they're back. I would love Nebraska to come into the Big 12 and reunite with CU. Go for it. Let's have the rivalries, because with all this mess going around, we're losing touch of the heart of college football or college athletics. And if we can kind of rebuild it with a new way, I think it'd be great for everybody.
If anybody can do it,
you forgot Farmageddon. That's the best name of a rivalry.
It is
Iowa State, Kansas State, I believe.
I'm still learning on that one, actually. All right, Moen.
I think with today's news, we always kind of said brands, rivalries, cultural fit. I think the Big Ten made it pretty clear that it's going to be brands. So Florida State and Clemson. I mean, when that rumor came out just the other day, I was like, well, that's crazy. Clemson's not coming to the Big Ten. Now I'm a daydream believer. I think that's going to happen. That the guy from Florida State came on there tonight and said everything but. I mean, he literally said everything but we're going to the Big Ten. And that, if you thought Colorado was going to be a domino falling, that's a brick falling on a pile of dominoes. That is going to be insane. So, boy, everybody strap in, because I don't see realignment slowing down until we get to the A3, and I think that's going to happen within the next 18 months.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, Immaculate.
Well, first, I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here. With how things are being expedited, I've been holding on to something that I really think that we maybe need to dive into here sooner at some point in time. And that's what's going on with the Ivy Leagues. And I'm saying that right now because we have Jeff Fuller, and I would like for him to be part of that, especially after what he just said, because I definitely have Duke as part of what I see happening there. I also have Stanford as part of that. And there is some talk about Vanderbilt and Northwestern. So that in the future, it seems like it's way in advance. I thought it was, but with what's going on now, the window of opportunity for them with what's going on with their lawsuit to maybe use that as a springboard to jump up into the FBS if they need to turn football into a moneymaker, that window just got much smaller, because I still can't get my head around Clemson and the Big Ten. Like, what? Is this for real? When I first saw that, like him, I thought it was a joke. Like, okay, this is just meant to push ESPN and the SEC. I mean,
that'll take time to digest all the way through.
Like, if it's for real, because now we're hearing talk from ESPN about UNC and Miami. That's what the SEC wants.
Right.
They were obviously watching this chairman of the board talking, because it came out almost right afterwards. So, I mean, there is already a reaction to that with this claim. So things are speeding up. So we might have to stick our radar out there for what else is coming.
Okay.
Did you guys see the breaking news real quick? Not
sure,
super breaking, but about a half an hour ago, ASU put out a press advisory indicating It will announce a major development with a corporate sponsor tomorrow at 9 a.m. So
what does that mean?
they probably it's some type of sponsorship. It's probably just money for the school, but they probably don't want to announce any movement if they are going to move to overshadow the sponsorship. So
Right.
announce the sponsorship, and if they are moving,
Could be an apparel deal.
Friday. Yeah, could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who knows?
All right. Well, I guess we'll have to find out. Before we sign off, I want to announce a meeting or show tomorrow night. Tomorrow night at 9 Eastern, it's going to be me and Sergeant Pickles, and we'll have various guest stars associated with that show. Obviously, it's going to be centered around the University of Washington, and we all know where they're possibly going, which is to the Big Ten. That'll be a fun show. Then the night after, I'm going to have Rebecca from the Washington Huskies, commonly known from the Greg Flukar Peek Around the Corner show. That'll be on Thursday. So again, tomorrow night, 9 Eastern, it'll be me and Sergeant Pickles, and we'll have some various guest stars with us. And I want to invite everybody to participate at that. Other than that, I got to get. So I want to thank everybody again for being here. You guys are studs, and I appreciate all of you, especially on short notice, because this was supposed to be a UConn show. So I appreciate everybody being here and jumping when I needed help. You go Huskies. If you're a BYU fan, scan that QR code in the upper right-hand corner. That is for Coug Connect. That is NIL for BYU. I neglected to say that at the beginning of the show. So hopefully people have stuck around to the end and they'll remember to do that. You can sign up for as little as $10 a month. And BYU needs a lot of help with NIL dollars. So if you have an opportunity, $10 a month, come be part of the action instead of just sitting back and watching, which we get a lot of at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. Everything else, I appreciate it, guys. Keep hold of the chairs you're sitting on, and we'll have to see what the news is breaking tomorrow. Right. As it goes, everybody have a great night, stay out of trouble, and we'll talk tomorrow. And you guys stick around for just a second.